I fight for people to be able to take 4 or 5 hours of their life and forget about everything else. Just be in the presence of the moment that's happening right now. Be in the presence of an opportunity to just let loose, let your hair down, have some fun, enjoy yourself. Whatever issues that are going on in life, they're still going to be there afterwards. We know that. But in this moment, in this time, in this opportunity to celebrate something with either family or coworkers or whatever the case may be, do that. Just forget everything else. Just do that right in this moment, right in this time.
Heroes are an inspiring group of people. Every one of them, from the larger-than-life comic book heroes you see on the big silver screen, to everyday heroes that let us live the privileged lives we do. Every hero has a story to tell, from the doctor saving lives at your local hospital, to the war veteran down the street who risked his life for our freedom, to the police officers and the firefighters who risk their safety to ensure ours. Every hero is special and every story worth telling. But there is one class of heroes that I think is often ignored: the entrepreneur, the creator, the producer, the ones who look at the problems in this world and think to themselves, you know what, I can fix that. I can help people. I can make a difference. Then they go out and do exactly that by creating a new product or introducing a new service. Some go on to change the world. Others make a world of difference to their customers. Welcome to The Hero Show. Join us as we pull back the masks on the world's finest heropreneurs and learn the secrets to their powers, their success, and their influence, so you can use those secrets to attract more sales, make more money, and experience more freedom in your business. I'm your host, Richard Matthews, and we are on in 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome back to The Hero Show. My name is Richard Matthews, and today I have live on the line David Hanscom. David, are you there?
I'm here. How you doing?
Awesome. Glad to have you here, David. So for those of you who've been following along with our travel and journeys, we are still in Fort Myers, Florida. And David, you're also here from Florida. You said you're up near Jacksonville area?
Yes, sir. I'm in Ponte Vedra, Florida area, which is right kind of between Jacksonville and St. Augustine, kind of the beachside area.
Nice. So that's like Daytona's up there too, isn't it? That's like where all the fancy spring break stuff happens.
Right. We're about an hour and 10 minutes north of Daytona.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, awesome. So glad to have you here. So before we get too far into this interview, what I want to do is just go through a brief introduction so our audience who may not know who you are can get a little bit of an idea. So David is a traveling event MC, DJ, and wedding and event industry thought leader. And you have been trusted by some of the world's top client base, and you've become one of the most in-demand event DJs across the country over the last 20 years, doing everything from corporate events to to big like industry music, that kind of stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You actually make me sound more important than I realized I was. That's it's pretty cool to think back on all the things I've been blessed to be able to do.
That's really cool. So to start off with, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're known for? What is it you do now? What's your business like? Who do you serve? What do you do for them?
Sure. So it's kind of a combination of I have a company called Why Entertainment, just like if you were asking the question. And that's actually a question my parents asked me my whole life when I was younger. Why do you want to be part of entertainment? Because I did a lot of things that never really made me a lot of money in related to the entertainment world. And so when I started my company, I figured that hopefully my company would be the answer to their question. So I named the company Why Entertainment. And so we have a handful of DJs that we vary between 8 to 10 DJs, just depending. Some of them are college students and they're with us for a season and then they move on and things like that. But with Y Entertainment, we service a lot of wedding clients, a lot of corporate clients, private events, Sweet 16 parties, things like that. And I do usually, excuse me, I do usually work a lot of those events as well. But then also on the personal side of things, I do a lot of event hosting for corporate events. I do team building, corporate game show stuff. I always say if I came back in another life, I would want to come back as a game show host on TV. I just think it's so much fun to do that. It requires a lot of spontaneity and everything. So we do that, and then I also am a co-host of a podcast and also a live show every Tuesday night, just helping new and kind of beginner people in the wedding and business industry, just trying to help them on the business side of things. I've always said that I really feel like people who are passionate about their craft really know what they're doing when it comes to their craft. But sometimes I call it the non-sexy part of things, the business side of things, they don't always invest as much time into those things. And so we try to help them with that and help them create a business that hopefully is going to be long-standing and sustainable for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that seems like that's a really common problem when you look at businesses, a lot, particularly small businesses, where it's just like one or two or three people. They're really, really good at the thing that they do, right? Doctors, lawyers, dentists, DJs, apparently, wedding photographers, that they have a craft that they're good at, but then you have all the other things that go into business, like your accounting and your hiring of staff and, processes and all the things that, make a business go around. You have to get good at marketing and sales and all these other bits and bobs. So I assume you said you've been doing this for 20 years, right?
Yeah, well, it's probably been more than 20 years, but I always feel like I'm old when I say any more than that. So it's probably been a little bit more than 20 years, but we'll go with that. It's a nice round number.
Nice. So when did you sort of realize that there was more to running a event and DJ style business than just actually doing the work?
Interestingly enough, believe it or not, really early on. I think I realized early on that because when you get into DJing, it's just kind of like you think about it, like there's no formal education for it. It's just kind of one of those things you decide to do, and you learn through either working for another company or, again, when I started, there wasn't things like the internet to search, and there wasn't YouTube videos out there to teach you and all of those things. So it was
Your podcast didn't exist.
a different way, in a different world. And so I just knew that there was two things. I knew that I loved music, and I knew that I loved being the class clown. So I figured this would be a great job for somebody who likes those two things, right? So I really started going out and talking to a lot of people that were already established doing this, and say, hey, listen, this is something I think I really want to do, but I know the basics of the fundamentals of DJing and the basics and fundamentals of music. What I don't necessarily know is the back end. How do I run a business? How do I do, how do I create something that's sustainable enough for me to actually consider doing this as a career and not just doing it just because it's fun? And so I think, just like I say, early on, I really saw that. And so I started analyzing a lot of businesses, and I started talking to a lot of people that were willing to hire me to subcontract for them. And I would tell them right up front, like, this is something I think I want to do one day for myself, but I also know that I'm not, I'm ignorant in the business side of things, and I don't want to be. I want to learn, I want to understand, I want to grow. So it was really something kind of early on, and I'm glad I did, because it's really helped me be able to make that shift of understanding the importance of teaching new people getting into it, and the next generation of creative people, the value and the importance of that stuff as well.
Yeah, that's really really fascinating. It's also really smart because you said you started young, like in high school. Is that right?
Yeah, when I was in high school. So I thought I was going to play pro baseball. That was my goal in life, was to play and I say in life like I was only a high school kid, but my goal then was to play pro baseball. But I ended up having reconstructive surgery on both of my ankles before I even graduated out of high school. Caused me to basically have to learn how to walk three times in my life. Every time they did another surgery, I had to learn how to walk again. So I felt like life was just taking me in a different direction, and this is where it ended up taking me. I had an opportunity to work. It was one of those situations. My dad was in the military, and I went to a Department of Defense school, and so I had enough credits to graduate. But if I wanted to stick around and try to play sports, I had to go to school half a day, and then I'd do something like a co-op work type thing half a day. And so I chose to work at the radio and television station, and I just kind of fell in love with it from there.
Awesome. So I think that's a good jumping off point for your origin story for the actual business, right? So we say on this show every good comic book hero has an origin story. It's the thing that made them into the hero they are today.
Mhm.
I want to hear that story. Basically, were you born a hero? Were you bit by a radioactive spider that made you want to get into the radio, television, and entertainment business? Or did you actually like, did you have a job anywhere in between those things? And like, basically, how did you become an entrepreneur from just this, the desire as a high school kid to get into the entertainment business?
No, I think that's awesome, and probably the origin would the best analogy would probably be the bit by the spider thing, because when I ended up going over to the radio and television station, it was like it was just on base. Again, my dad was in the military, so it was just on base. And they threw me into the DJ booth, and they said, "Here, go." Believe it or not, we were actually playing records at the time, and they were like, "Hey, just go play some records, and if you want to say something every once in a while in between, you're welcome to do that. There's probably only like 8 people listening to you. Just be sure you don't swear." And I was like, okay,
I
that
can handle that.
that sounds enough. But so then what happened was I started asking them, like, can I play music that I think people would want to hear? Can I play music that I think seems relatively popular? Now, another part of this story is that we were stationed on the island of Bermuda, so it wasn't like in America. It wasn't in mainstream America, as you will. We were stationed on the island of Bermuda, which is 11 miles long and 2 miles wide at its widest point. And when you think about how small that really is and the amount of people that were on the island, it was kind of neat to be able to, especially at that age, it was neat to be able to be a voice that people heard. And again, no social media. So I couldn't post pictures of myself on Instagram. I couldn't, create a Facebook page that people could follow and things like this during that time frame. So it was really interesting that I started getting people calling into the radio station and requesting songs. And I would have people call in and say, "Hey, we're having a little gathering next weekend. Could you come out and spin some tunes for us?" and things like that. So I think that's really kind of like, as the analogy, the spider that bit me and just said, "Hey man, like this is pretty fun. This is pretty exciting." And the real interesting twist of the whole story is that any other time other than when I'm doing, DJing or emceeing an event or whatever it might be, I'm actually a very introverted person. So my natural personality is to very much be an introvert, and so it was a learning curve that I really had to go through. And I think being in radio, where I'm in this box where nobody really sees me, but everybody hears me, and I communicated with people, but I didn't see them in front of my face, so that fear of, if you're up in front of an audience, and it's you hear these stories about when you're up in front of an audience and there could be 100 people out there that think you're the best thing under the sun, and there's one heckler out there that's like picking his nose and flashing stupid signs at you and things like that, and you always hone in on that one guy. And it's just I felt like I was that guy, so not the guy doing it, but the guy that honed in on that one guy. And so it really helped me with that. And then as I started getting paid to do it, because I mean, at that point I wasn't getting paid, but then as I started getting paid to do it, I was like, wait a minute, there could really be something here. And I went to my parents. I said, "Hey, I really want to give this thing a shot. Could you guys loan me some money to buy some equipment?" And that's kind of really how it all kicked off.
That's really awesome. And like it just struck me too. The you said a minute ago, people were asking you to spin some tunes, and you said were started off with records, and like you literally in the old days you had to spin them.
Right. You're absolutely right.
So that's it's funny for just how much it's changed, but also like just that the story is really interesting that you started off with a radio show in, what did you say it was Bermuda?
Yes, sir. In Bermuda. Yep.
So did you actually increase their listenership by changing sort of how it was working?
I probably, yeah. I mean, because when I started there, it was really just it was um maybe just kind of safe, like traditional old school style of music at that time frame. And there was just so much, so to put some context to it, this was like in the early 90s. So this is when things like hip hop music really started hitting the airwaves. Dance and techno music really started hitting the airwaves, and this was stuff that they had never even played in
Garth Brooks, right?
Oh, Garth Brooks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the country stuff, right? So all of these new genres of music started really hitting the airwaves hard and heavy, and it wasn't just rock and roll and pop anymore. And so I was just always so fascinated about all these different types of music. And I said, "Hey, let's get this out here. Let people hear this." And so I don't know if I revolutionized anything, but I do think that I was able to expose the people on that base to music that maybe otherwise they wouldn't even known existed.
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm a country music fan personally. That's why I brought up Garth Brooks. But yeah, it was like early '90s, and it was the first time country music actually became popular,
Right.
right? And it became a like a legitimate genre of music, was after him.
Sure.
So
Yeah. It wasn't necessarily so twangy and so like, my dog ran away with my wife and took a case of beer on the way out the door kind of stuff. Like it was a little
Yeah.
bit fun pop like stories that they were telling in the song. So yeah, absolutely. It really kind of exploded. So you had all those different genres that were exploding on the scene. And I'm just like, yeah, we need to let people hear this. Like we need to let people, be exposed to this music. So it was fun. It was a cool time. And I
Yeah.
mean, to think I was only yeah, man, I was probably only 17, 18, 17 years old at that time. It's just
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It's
Just
really cool. And like if you look back on it, the 90s is really going to go down probably in history as a music revolution because it changed a lot of the music industry changed then. So, and then right at the end of that, like the late 90s, early 2000s is when it all started shifting digital and really changed the music industry completely.
sure.
So, well, that's really a really interesting story. I want to talk a little bit about your superpowers, right? So, we say every iconic hero has a superpower, whether it's a fancy flying suit made by a genius intellect or the ability to call down thunder from the sky. In the real world, heroes have what I call a zone of genius, which is either a skill or a set of skills that you were born with or developed over time that really energize all of your other skills, right? It's the thing that connects everything together for you in the background. And its superpower is what allows you to help other people, right? To help them slay their villains and come out on top in their own journeys, right? And so, with that sort of framing, what do you think your superpower is in your business?
This probably was my most exciting question that you were going to ask me, to be honest with you, because I was like, when you told me about kind of how this was going to go, I was like, this is the one right here. And the reason for that is that I did an interview a few years ago for a trade magazine within our industry, and they asked me a very challenging question. They said, define yourself and your style in one word if you can. And I sat there for a second, and the first thing that I thought about was chameleon. That was the word that came to mind, chameleon. And I also think that this chameleon mindset is probably a superpower in this context, because I have just really realized that I'm not in the music business. I'm not in the DJ business. I'm in the people business. And what I provide people is entertainment through music, through my voice, through whatever it is that I'm doing. And if I understand that there's going to be different age groups of people that are at these events, there's going to be different ethnic backgrounds, there's going to be different religious backgrounds, there's going to be different people are going to be in different places in their lives. Some people are going to be really happy about what's going on in their life. Some people are going to be there and they're like, I was forced to be here, so I'm just going to, suffer through this company event thing. And if I was able to understand that if I find a way to relate to each one of them all at the same time, then I can get their buy-in, I can get their trust, I can get their belief in me, and I can get them to understand that, hey, I only have when you think about the grand scheme of life, I only have a very condensed, small amount of time that I'm going to be with you. And I want that to be the best time it can possibly be. So let's figure out a way to make that happen for you. And so for some people, there's always in some groups of people, there's those folks that are very sarcastic and they always want to jab with their little sayings and little things like that. And I understood that I can communicate back and forth with those people that same way, and they're receptive to that. But I can't do that to this other person on the other side here who is kind of just quietly sitting there. They're probably very much an introvert the way I normally am in my normal life. And I see that and I identify that. And I'm not going to communicate with them the same way that I'm communicating with this other guy who's constantly trying to just, peck like a little bird, peck, 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 and try to see if he can knock me off my game. Like I'm not going to communicate with those two people the same way, but I'm still going to be able to relate to those two people at the exact same time.
Yeah, and it's a difficult skill to pick up too, especially if you're doing this live, like on stage in front of an audience, right? So working with these people and being able to, what is it, like chameleon or, put in the superhero thing, like Mystique, be able to change your personality, like, like that to
Yeah, exactly.
interact with the different people.
Yep. Yep. And I've
Yeah,
tried to teach that to other people, the people that work for my company. Kind of the second part of your question, like the people that work for my company, I've constantly tried to teach them that same. Like if one of them right here, they probably say I beat it into their head, but I do it on purpose because I want them to understand that we are in the people business. The deliverable that we provide them is music and entertainment, but we are definitely in the people business. And if you can understand that and you can master that, you could go a long ways.
Yeah, just it strikes me when you say that like your deliverable is music and entertainment, but like the deliverable if have you seen The Greatest Showman?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And one of the lines he says in there, he's talking to what's the guy's name, the reviewer guy who's like reviewing his stuff and is always telling him his stuff sucks. I
Right.
can't remember his name, but anyways, at one point he's like, "How can you be excited doing all this fake stuff?" And he was like, "The smiles don't look fake."
Yeah.
And he like because he understood what he was delivering, right? He's delivering happiness.
Right.
And it sounds like that's the business you're in. You're in the business of delivering happiness, and that that changes based on, the person that's in the room. You have to do different things to make them have that experience.
Sure, and I mean we're definitely not doing funeral parties, which I don't mean that to be disrespectful at all, but I mean like most of all of the events that we're doing are posed to be or supposed to be a happy a celebration for some reason, whether it's a wedding celebration, whether it's a company celebrating having a great year that year, or a sweet 16 or any of these ideas, you know what I mean, or just a team building function where a company wants to bring their staff together and their employees together and just do something fun and something bonding to bring them together. Like all of those things are set up and designed to be happy occasions. And yeah, there potentially can be some pain points in them, but especially when you start thinking about team building and those types of exercises, yeah, sometimes there are some pain points that are in there, but working through those pain points together to get to a positive outcome is the whole goal of the thing in the first place. So yeah, I think it's great, and I love that line about the smiles don't look fake. And I don't really think that you can you when you can make people smile, I think you can make them do anything, because at that
Yeah.
point I feel like they've let their guard down and they've said, I feel comfortable with this person, I feel okay with this guy, he's not here to harm, or girl, they're not here to harm me, and I want to enjoy my time with them. And that's a really cool switch when you see it flipped.
So just sort of like another aspect of that superpower, has that come into your marketing as a differentiator for why someone should hire you guys or should bring you guys on as opposed to like one of your competitors?
I think so, because a lot of times I'll talk to a client and they'll say, for example, they'll say, are you? I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. Are you going to take requests from our guests? Here's a prime example, and I'll say, would you like us to take requests from your guests? Like letting them know that I want to do whatever you feel is going to best set up this situation to have a positive outcome. And there are a lot of people that do what I do that really kind of have their set way of doing things, and the beauty of life is that that's okay. There's a clientele out there for people, or for a DJ, for example, that says, here's what I play, here's how I play it, I don't take requests, I don't, like, this is what I do.
Like
And
it's a
somebody
show,
for
right?
that, yeah, and there's somebody out there for that person. And for me, I would just rather say to the client, tell me your vision of how you want this thing to look and tell me your vision of how you want this thing to happen. I'll be happy to offer you some tips and suggestions and ideas and maybe some pitfalls that I've seen happen based on what you tell me. But at the end of the day, I want this to represent your vision of what you think it should be like. And then I want to work together to figure out how to blow that completely out of the water and exceed those expectations.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the flip side then of your superpower is your fatal flaw, right? And
Yeah.
just like every Superman has his kryptonite or Wonder Woman has her bracelets of victory that she can't remove without going mad, you probably have a flaw that's held you back in your business, something that you've struggled with. For me, it's a couple of things like perfectionism I struggled with for a long time that kept me from shipping product. Because I could always tweak it a little bit more, fix it a little bit more, and really it was just fear of actually bringing things to market, or lack of self-care, which mean I'd let my clients walk all over me and not actually have any solid boundaries set up. But I think more important than what the flaw is how you've worked to rectify it or get over it, or deal with it in your business so that you can continue to grow and flourish. And hopefully, sharing that will help the people listening here learn a little bit from your experience.
Sure. So I think there's probably two things. One of them I alluded to earlier, which is the fact that I definitely am an introverted person in my normal life, and so There's a lot of times where I do believe that that got in the way of me being able to have opportunities that I missed early on because I was like, oh, they're not going to think I'm good enough, or they're just all the silly things that you tell yourself when you're an introverted person. I don't want the spotlight on me. I don't want everybody to see me. And it was just something that I had to work through and had to get over. And I actually had a mentor that taught me to create this avatar, and at the time that term wasn't, he didn't use that term, but I know that's a term that people are, I think, in the business world are familiar with now. Like, create this avatar of like this perfect event host, this perfect person doing the job that you want to do, like all the way down to how do they dress, how do they walk, how is their inflection in their voice, what is their name, create a name for them. And he said, become that person, like almost like you're acting, like become that person when you go out and do these things, so that psychologically it's not David doing them, it's whoever this avatar is that you create. And then he said, the next part of this, you're going to think I'm crazy, but one day you're going to come back and tell me that I was right. He said, eventually David is going to become almost jealous, not necessarily jealous, but almost look at this avatar and be like, wait a minute, I can do this. Why am I being somebody else? This is me doing this. I can do this. And that really is what happened. And so I think that that's super helpful for anybody who is nervous and maybe introverted and afraid of what other people are going to think, is to maybe try that approach. Maybe just, if you have to fake it till you make it. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of that term. I think it's used way too often, but to some context, I think that makes sense. If you have to fake it till you make it, then so be it. And then secondly, and the second one, and I think it's a spin off of the first one, but when eventually when the internet became more prevalent, Facebook, Instagram, all these things became more prevalent, and people are posting videos all the time and photos of themselves all the time, this, that, and the other thing, I just would continue to keep saying to myself, like, who really wants to hear what I have to say? Who really cares what I have to say? And I would say this to myself like over and over again. And then I finally said, you know what? It really doesn't matter how many people want to hear what I have to say. If what I have to say can help one person, then I'm like doing a disjustice if I don't at least put it out there. And that's when I just decided to start doing the podcast that we do now. And that's when I decided to start doing the weekly live show that we started doing right now, because I said to myself, if somebody hadn't helped me, I wouldn't be where I am today. And the best way for me to pay it forward and give it back to that person is to do the same thing. And don't worry about if 100 people watching you are like, that guy's full of malarkey. If one of those people looks at you and says, I can relate to that, and I can understand that, and that can help me make a change in my life, then it's worth doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I love the metaphor of having a persona that you step into when you go to perform. Because it's actually something that I have seen a lot of high performers do, right? And I've heard this everything from, Michael Jordan when he steps onto the court to, high performing CEOs, right? And like to, even like what you're doing is you have a persona that you step into, and you act as that character. And what's funny is people think acting is fake, but if you actually look at your life, right, that's the whole, the fake it till you make it thing, which I think is a terrible phrase because it's not fake, right? Action is real,
Right.
right? And when you take action, you are defined not by your thoughts, you're defined by your actions, right? Your actions are actually what make you who you are. So if you create a persona and then step into that persona and act that way, that's why you get to the point where you realize that, like, hey, that's actually me, right?
Right.
Because that's the actions that you're taking. And it's actually, if you look into the entertainment industry with actors, when they have to play characters that are, real antithesis of their human character, like their actual person,
Mhm.
it can cause like psychological issues, right? Like when they have to play bad guys who are just like the worst of humanity,
Right.
it impacts them because of how they're acting, right?
Right.
Because acting is how you define yourself. And so it's actually a really, powerful strategy for changing yourself, right? For improving yourself is to pick who you want to be and then act like that person, right? And then that changes you, right, into that person, which is, it's a powerful way to, like I said, to improve yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think for me, the most, I always try to follow the philosophy that I definitely don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. I mean, sometimes we're just by circumstance that happens, but I always want to surround myself with people who are doing the things that I want to be doing, so that I can hopefully learn from them either by observation or by formal teaching or by just
Osmosis.
or osmosis even. Yeah, you know what I mean. But I just believe in the power of being around people who are where I want to be in life and just learning from what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a powerful strategy for growth as well. Is just, it's changing the room you're in, right? If you're in a room with people who are, have bigger dreams than you have, or who have different set of what they think is, what would you call it? Different version of what their limits are, right? So if their limits are like, you have limits that are here, and then their limits are like way up here, it changes you, right? Where you're like, maybe I'm putting my limits are like self-imposed, right? And I can change them and do those things.
I think one of the interesting things in life to me is when you think about the thought of gravity and how strong gravity is, right? Gravity is what the strongest force on earth. I don't know, but let's say at least one of the strongest forces on earth. And gravity only pulls one way, which is what? Pulls down.
Down.
Pulls down.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we understand the philosophy that if you're allowing people to always pull you down, that's always going to be a stronger force than you trying to pull them up. And so that's not to say that you can't help people, but that's also to say that if you allow yourself to keep continuing to be drugged down by negativity and drugged down by a mindset that just doesn't resonate with where you are in life, you will never reach your full potential because these things are going to continue to keep pulling you down. And sadly enough, you aren't strong enough on your own to pull yourself up from that. And so that, for me,
Yeah.
using that analogy is the reason why I like to be around and surround myself with these individuals and with these experiences and circumstances that are, in my mind, greater than me or where I want to be in life.
Absolutely. So, I think that makes for a good transition for my next question, which is about your common enemy, right? So every superhero has an arch nemesis, a thing that they constantly have to fight against in their world, right? In the world of business, it takes on a lot of forms, but generally speaking, we put it in the context of your clients, right? The people who hire you. And it's a mindset or it's a flaw that you're constantly having to fight to overcome so that you can get them the result they're looking for, right? And so if you had your, magic wand, and every time someone, signed on the dotted line, you could just bop them on the head with your magic wand and you wouldn't have to deal with that anymore. What is the arch nemesis in your business?
I think the arch nemesis in my business, in my industry, in my clientele is that probably they are, and I used this term earlier, and I know, and I don't mean it in a negative way whatsoever, but probably they are one of the most ignorant clients that a business has to deal with. And what I mean by that is most, especially when you think about from the standpoint of a wedding client. So we'll take them as an example because that's a lot of what I'm talking about in this context. This is a lot of times the first time they're having this experience. This is the first time they're getting married. This is the first time they're creating a wedding celebration and so on and so forth. They don't have anything to compare it to normally. They don't have any prior experience into it normally. Yeah, some people get married 2, 3 times, whatever, but the majority of the client is this is the first time they're a first time buyer, maybe the best way to use that term. And so they don't understand the things that we understand. And using the old analogy of riding a bike, and you teach somebody how to ride a bike, and most of the time you forget more than you know that you have to teach them. And so there are just so many things that are super important in the execution of this event for a client that a lot of times they think it's just like meaningless and not important and irrelevant. It doesn't matter if we go through this worksheet. It doesn't matter, you guys do this every weekend of your life, you know what you're doing. And I just think that it's an injustice that they're doing to themselves, because um, I don't know that I would want to have somebody handle what is perceivably, or a lot of times said, one of the most important days of somebody's life. I don't know that I would want to have somebody handle that for me that's just going through the motions, that's just putting it on autopilot, and whatever happens, happens. Good luck. Like, people spend good money on events, people spend good money on celebrations, and they're also, much like a live TV show, they once they happen, and it's not like you can
And it's
botch up
over.
this event and just be like, you know what, let's get together next week and we'll do it all over again. Like, you and I are doing this interview right now, and if I totally screwed it up, you could always just be like, all right, David, let's just start over again because this is not working, right? And we could do that, and then put that out in the world for everybody to
And our
hear.
audience would never know.
Okay, exactly. But in my world, I don't have that opportunity. I don't have that chance, and so I really, and also the other part of that is that our industry hasn't done a really good job of creating a level of understanding for the client to understand the difference between people who truly passionately care about your event and people who are just going through the motions. And I just wish there was a better way for that. So I think those are probably the two arch
Yeah,
nemesis
that's
that I face a
it's
lot.
really interesting that you say that because I paid my way through college as a wedding photographer.
Hmm.
And so I went to a lot of weddings and photographed a lot of weddings. And the thing that constantly popped up to me was that generally speaking, unless they had a wedding planner, the photographer or the DJ were the most experienced person in the room, right? And it's like they're all freaking out about what's supposed to happen next, and you're like, hey, you need to cut the cake,
Yeah,
right? Like you're in the background, like you sort of know what the process is supposed to be because you've done a lot of these things, and most of the time they don't unless they have a professional around who's actually guiding
exactly.
them through that process.
No, absolutely. And the scary thing is, if the most experienced person in the room really doesn't have that much experience themselves, now that event is really in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember how many times they would be like, "Oh, we want to do this photography stuff," and we're like, "We want to do all the group pictures here." And at the time, I'm like, and I'd be like, "Well, you have to all get to this next thing. If we do all of that, you're all, And there's like, you'd have to like coach them through the steps of their wedding just so they knew, like, because they don't know, right? They don't know what they don't know. And I think, ignorance is a great way to say it, but it's they've never done it before, right? And so as the professional in this space, you have to sort of educate them on like what needs to happen.
And I think the more and so this is back to relationships, right? This all comes back to my comment earlier about being in the people business. If we're able to take time to establish a mutual respect with our client, so that they understand, if I offer you a suggestion, if I offer you an alternative to what you want to do, it's not because I want to go against what you want to do. It's because in between the two of us, I have a lot more experience in this than you do. And you're paying me and you're entrusting me because you want this one-time experience to be the best it can be. So sometimes you just got to have a little faith. And on our side of it, we also have to realize that, especially when it comes to wedding, there's a difference between weddings and corporate events when it comes to the money. But with weddings, it's such a very personal attachment to the money. Like, either the couple themselves or the parents or somebody have been saving money all their lives for this day, and so there's such a personal attachment to the money associated with that event. And um and so it's important for that communication to be there, for them to realize that we understand, that we realize that you are probably spending money that you've either saved forever, or your grandparents get saved forever to give you, or somehow, or Lord forbid, even using credit cards to pay for their wedding and then we'll pay it off later. um, we understand the what comes with that and the emotions that come with that.
Yeah. So I'm just curious if this has ever happened, because I know it happened a couple of times when I was doing the wedding photography stuff, is if you have, during the reception and everyone's dancing and stuff like that, or particularly when the bride is getting up to dance with the groom or something like that, and you have a request for a song that is completely inappropriate for a wedding, like the whole the whole lyrics of the song are about cheating on your wife or something like that.
Yeah. So, what's even more funny than that, and then I'm going to go back to you to answer that question. But what's even more funny about that is when sometimes they will ask for a song for their first dance. This might have been what your point you were getting at, but they would ask for a song for their first dance, and you say to them, "Have you really listened to the lyrics of that song? Because it's not a love song whatsoever."
You're like, that's the song about cheating on your husband,
My
right? Like,
but this is a love song by any stretch of the imagination. But to your point, like, so right now with in the day and age that we're all living in, the elephant in the room, COVID-19 is creating a necessity to do things differently than we've ever had to do them before, with social distancing and things like that. And normally we're so used to people coming up to us and making requests and things like that, and that's been kind of frowned upon lately. So we all have to kind of find ways to address that and still be able to have this symbiotic relationship with our audience. And so, like, we use a program at our events. It's a program called Request Now, and essentially what happens is a guest at an event, there's a special phone number that they can text a request into, and then we have a program on our computer that shows us those song requests. And so the most popular request right now is that WAP song that is
oh
like
man.
incredibly inappropriate for a wedding. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's funny too. Like, I had this conversation with somebody the other day, and I said, but when you say it's inappropriate, it's really like, in what terms? Like, it might be inappropriate to you, but if they're okay with it, then is it really inappropriate? I don't know. I had a client one time ask me to play all the unedited versions of the songs that they wanted me to play. Normally, we play the kind of clean radio edited versions at events, just to be respectful to people and things like this. And um, for about 2 weeks, like, it was a really interesting topic of conversation amongst me and the staff that work with us, because I was like, I like to play devil's advocate about a lot of things. And I'm like, if you think about the fact that the couple that asked us they're younger, they're in their 20s, which means that they've never lived a day without one of these, which is a cell
Yeah.
phone. They've never lived a day without one of those. They've never known life without one of those. They've never known a life without iTunes. They've never known a life without Spotify. They've never known a life without YouTube. And all of those resources provide them songs that are unedited versions of the songs. And unless there's some level of censorship going on within their household, which I'm not here to judge, it doesn't matter to me, but if it's not happening, then that's normal and customary to those people. And is it really fair
Yeah.
for me to censor the situation if that's normal and customary to their household? And that was just a question I started posing, because I try to really be open-minded and think about a lot of things. I worry that I'm going to offend somebody else in the event, but is it fair for me to do that if that's what they really want at their event? So just interesting stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting conversation you probably have to have too, where you're like, hey, I'm open to doing that, but you also have a bunch of, audience guests. Are you sure everyone's going to be okay with that? And, just back to that education piece, and you're like, hey, if that's really what you want, we'll do it.
Well, my typical disclaimer, and again, this has only happened like once or twice, and my typical disclaimer has always been, if you want me to do that, the only caveat that I ask is that in the beginning of the event, I need you to, when we have everybody in the room's attention, I need you to take the microphone and I need you to tell your guests, we have given the DJ permission to play music that is unedited. If that offends anybody, we want to let you guys know this now. But I want them to take that responsibility, because I look at it like everybody in the room is a potential future client for mine. And that could be they might think I'm the greatest, everything else they might think is absolutely great, but then they hear a song come on that's dropping f-bombs and this, that, and the other thing, and they're like, well, I don't really want that at my event, so maybe this is not the right guy. And then so I miss out on a potential opportunity in that situation, where normally I wouldn't even be doing this anyways. So I've always
Yeah,
just
which goes right back to that business and marketing skill set you have to have in order to run your business well.
right, right.
Cool. So I think that's a good point to flip the script there, right? So if your common enemy is sort of that first time buyer mentality, then the other side of that is your driving force, right? And just like Spider-Man fights to save New York, or Batman fights to save Gotham, or Google fights to index and categorize all the world's information, what is it that you fight for in your business?
I fight for people to be able to take 4 or 5 hours of their life and forget about everything else. Just be in the presence of the moment that's happening right now. Um, be in the presence of an opportunity to just let loose, let your hair down, have some fun, enjoy yourself. Whatever issues that are going on in life, they're still going to be there afterwards. We know that. But in this moment, in this time, in this opportunity to celebrate something with either family or coworkers or whatever the case may be, do that. Just forget everything else. Just do that right in this moment, right in this time.
Yeah, that's really really powerful, right? I was writing the script the other day for the first episode of our travel blog, because we've been traveling for several years, and I'm finally getting around to actually editing the videos we've had for several years.
Nice.
And one of the things that I wrote in the first little section of that is like, every once in a while, if you pay close enough attention, you can get a glimpse of magic. And the magic essentially is a moment of absolute presence, right? When you're actually here in this moment, enjoying what's happening right now, which is so hard to do. And it's something that traveling allows you to do. It's something that, events, when you get to go to a cool event like a wedding or something like that, that it just forces you to drop everything else out of your mind and focus on what's happening right here, right now. And it's those moments in life that create the the lasting memories, right? The stuff that you look back on in years and remember. And it's interesting that like that's your business. Your business is
Yeah.
helping people create those moments.
I had a situation where I was doing an event at this. It was like a Fourth of July event, and so you can imagine it was in downtown Jacksonville. Thousands of people all gathered, waiting on the fireworks and all of that stuff. And I was down there doing some music, and I see like almost like weaving through all these people. I see this guy like barreling up towards me, and I didn't recognize him. And I was like, "Oh, this is weird. This guy is like intently coming directly at me. Like, should I be afraid or what's going on here?" And he finally gets his way up to me. And he says, "Hey, man, hey, you were the DJ at my wedding like 6 years ago, man. People still talk about it. We still talk about how much fun we had." Da, 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 da. And I mean, he's probably going to hate that I'm going to say this, but I honestly didn't remember who he was. I mean, in my defense, like I probably do about 250 events a year, like, and that was
Yeah,
six.
you do a lot of them.
Do the math, right? But but it was just like, to your point, like creating that memory where he saw me in a sea of 1,000 people, and there, who knows about the number, but roughly 1,000 people, and he made it a point to barrel through all those people to come say to me, "Great to see you. We still talk about how much fun you made our wedding, and it's awesome to see you again." Like that is, if that's not a MasterCard moment, man, like I don't know what is.
It's magic,
Yeah.
right? It always reminds me of that Disney movie with the people who live in your head, the little
Oh,
characters. I can't remember what the name of the movie is right now, but it's the they have those island memories,
huh?
right? The what do they call them? It's like this has created a piece of their personality,
Right.
right? And I always figure that in the real world, those memories that create a portion of who you are the ones where you were completely present in the moment.
Right.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah,
And
that's really cool.
to do the same thing. It's very easy for us to get distracted, and this is you mentioned the marketing, and between the marketing side of things and the education of our staff side of things, I always try to remind them, stay in the moment of what is happening at these events, because there are just little things that can happen that you have the power. Remember, you have one of these, you have a microphone, you're the loudest person in the room. And I don't mean that obnoxiously. I just mean that you have the ability to accentuate a really special moment that maybe otherwise would be missed. So if so there's two ways to look at this. If the audience is going to miss it and you're able to save them from missing it, then that's just another layer, another level of professionalism and caring that you bring to that event. If you miss it and the audience doesn't miss it, and you missed it because you were looking at your damn phone or something else, you were being distracted by something else that you otherwise didn't have to be distracted by, then that's bad on you. Like if they all saw it and you didn't, that's terrible. I just, so, and it's easy to be distracted. I mean, I'm the owner of the company. I got 6 people working for me sometimes all at the same time, and they're all texting me, asking me questions and things like that. And sometimes I just have to send a blanket text to everybody and say, hey, remember, I'm working an event right now too. It's not fair to my customer to have to be fielding all of these things that you guys shouldn't be asking me anyways. If it's vitally important, okay, whatever. But if it's something you already know, just deal with it and get with me after the night is over or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, and you have to like teach them the processes so they're like, hey, I know how to handle the situation when it comes up.
Yeah, and it's
That's
like to say, I'm being a jerk and I don't want to hear from you. It's just that if it's something you can handle on your own, I don't need to hear about it. Tell me about it tomorrow.
absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about some practical things for your business, right? I call this your hero's tool belt.
Okay.
And just like every superhero has awesome gadgets like batarangs or web slingers or laser eyes or a big magical hammer, I want to talk about top 1 or 2 tools you couldn't live without in your business. Could be anything from your notepad, your calendar, to your marketing tools, to something you use to actually deliver your experiences. Anything you think is absolutely essential to getting your job done that you think might be interesting for our audience to hear about.
Well, a calendar is definitely, I could not live without my calendar on my phone. And the program Calendly, not that I'm trying to plug them, but ever since I discovered the program Calendly, like I live and die by that thing because people contact me to schedule either meetings or phone calls or things like that nonstop, constantly, all day. And I'm just like, I don't know if I'm coming or going. Like if I don't have that near me, I don't even know what answer to give them. So now I'm just like, here's the link to my Calendly. Go on there, and I promise you, if you put something on there, we will connect because that's what I live by. I live by that darn thing. So definitely that from the behind the scenes, keeping the train moving side of things, and then from the performance side of things, as funny as it may sound, I think just my eyes and my ears, just being able to see and observe what's going on and hear the as weird as it sounds, hear the temperature in the room, but just hear how people are. There's a lot of times where I can pretty much almost identify how an event's going to go just by the first few minutes of people coming into the room, just the observation of what's going on. And I think that's allowed me to grow and learn how to gauge what I'm going to do. Like literally, I'll go into an event and have like, I'm either going to be A, B, C, or D, or I might just be A, B, and C. And I don't even know which one it's going to be until I see what they're doing, because I want to be able to respond to who they are, how they are, what they are, so that they get out of me the best thing that makes sense to them. So being able to see and hear those things are vitally important to me to make sure that I'm able to do that.
And that goes right back to like being present in the moment. Like you actually have to be paying attention, you have to have your mind and your senses engaged in what's happening right there, right now.
Yep.
Yeah, and so just an interesting thought on the calendar too is um, it's the one question that I get the most consistent answer to on this show, almost to the point of sounding what do you call it, like repetitive. That I ask that question all the time, and the number one answer, like 85-90% of the guests we have, it's my calendar.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that is it seems that all the entrepreneurs who have success, they live and die by their calendar, right? The same way. And people who are not entrepreneurs don't always understand that, right? Where they look at you and be like, it's kind of crazy that you live and die by your calendar. And you're like, no, you don't understand. Like my business is my calendar.
Well,
Um,
I think to your point, um, ironically, I just had this conversation last night with somebody talking about the difference between somebody who owns a business and somebody who works a job. And there's nothing wrong with either one. Whichever choice, whichever path, whichever decision somebody chooses to go down, that works for them. That's perfect. But when you own a business, you don't ever clock out. I mean, some people get to a certain point in their business in their life where they can. But truly, if you're the owner of the business, I would challenge to find very many people that can turn their brain off 100% completely from their business for any length of time. Sure, we can all say, okay, I'm going to take the weekend and I'm just going to put my phone down. I'm not going to do anything. But I promise you, at some point in time in their brain, they're thinking about, what am I missing because I put my phone down, and there's probably something going on that I should be paying attention to. Like, you just can't get away from it. Whereas a lot of people, if they work in corporate America or they work a job or something like that, they clock in at whatever time they clock in at, they clock out at whatever time they clock out. They don't have their work email on their phone. So if you email them after work hours, you're probably not going to get a response from them until the following day. And quite honestly, they don't care, because they're like, yo, that's work stuff. That's not me stuff. That's work stuff. And when you own a business, I just don't think you have that same mentality. And you also understand that the most valuable commodity to you is your time. You don't ever get it back. You can make money again. You can always make money again, but you can never get time back. And so you have to take advantage of every hour that's available to you for personal and professional reasons. And so having that calendar and having that resource to go to and keep all that organized for you is vital.
Yeah, it's almost like you have your if you and because I've worked in corporate America before, you have like a separate identity, right? You have your this is my work identity, and then when you walk out the doors, you back to yourself, right? Your own identity.
Yep.
And like what happens at work just doesn't matter, right? It's not there. But like when you're a business owner, you just have the one, right? And it's all got to be like I tell my wife all the time, like if you want me to be there, you can make sure it gets on the family calendar, because otherwise, like it's just not there. Like it all needs to be on there. Like everything from like we had my daughter's birthday party last night at a Mexican restaurant. It's got to be on the calendar, right? Just because that's just how my brain works, and how you have to just think through your business. Like, hey, I blocked off the whole evening from 3 o'clock till the whole rest of the night just to spend time with my family, but it's on the calendar, right? So that I can disconnect from everything else that's on the calendar and just be like,
Well,
I'm here.
it's also part of the habitual thing that works for you. Like I go to Orange Theory for a session 3 times a week. It's on my calendar. Like, I don't just think about it. Like, it is on my calendar. I try to go get a massage once or twice a month. It's on my calendar. I take my dogs to go get their nails trimmed every 3 weeks. It's on my calendar. Like, literally, just about, like you said, just about everything I do is on my calendar. And every time somebody says to me, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? I don't know. Look at my calendar. I have no idea. I know what I'm doing today. I don't know what I'm doing in 3 weeks from now. Look at my calendar.
Yeah, the calendar's super important.
Speaking of heroic tools, I want to take a few minutes to tell you about a tool we built that powers the Hero Show and is now this show's primary sponsor. Hey there, fellow podcaster. Having a weekly audio and video show on all the major online networks that builds your brand, creates fame, and drives sales for your business doesn't have to be hard. I know it feels that way because you've tried managing your show internally and realize how resource intensive it can be. You felt the pain of pouring 8 to 10 hours of work into just getting 1 hour of content published and promoted all over the place. You see the drain on your resources, but you do it anyways because you know how powerful it is. Heck, you've probably even tried some of those automated solutions and ended up with stuff that makes your brand look cheesy and cheap. That's not helping grow your business. Don't give up though. The struggle ends now. Introducing Push Button Podcasts, a done-for-you service that will help you get your show out every single week without you lifting a finger after you've pushed that stop record button. We handle everything else: uploading, editing, transcribing, writing, research, graphics, publication, and promotion, all done by real humans who know, understand, and care about your brand almost as much as you do. Empowered by our own proprietary technology, our team will let you get back to doing what you love while we handle the rest. Check us out at pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero for 10% off the lifetime of your service with us, and see the power of having an audio and video podcast growing and driving micro celebrity status and business in your niche without you having to lift more than a finger to push that stop record button. Again, that's pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero. See you there. You're listening to The Hero Show, unlocking the power of influence and success.
Yeah.
So my next question for you then is about your own personal heroes, right? So every hero has their mentors, right? Frodo had Gandalf, Luke had Obi-Wan, Robert Kiyosaki had his rich dad, and of course, Spider-Man had Uncle Ben. So who are some of your heroes? Were they real life mentors? Were they speakers, authors, peers who are maybe just a couple years ahead of you? And how important were they to what you've accomplished so far in your entertainment business?
So I don't know if this will be seen, but right behind me is a big poster of Michael Jordan. I know you can see that.
Yeah,
Michael
yeah, I can see it.
was definitely a hero, I guess you could say, definitely an influence on my life, for a lot of reasons. Number one, because of work ethic. Number one, or excuse me, number two, because I feel like he really learned how to transcend basketball, and he was beyond just recognizable as a basketball player. And in recent times, people have maybe feelings about him differently than maybe they did back in the 90s on some of the things that they've seen. And um, but I think Michael Jordan is a good example of somebody who, the old saying goes, you should never meet your heroes. Like, I don't think I'd ever want to meet Michael Jordan in fear of, what if what if we didn't get along, or what if he was kind of this jerk to me or something like this. Like, that, I think that would really deflate me. So in a way, I'm kind of glad that I've never met Michael Jordan. And I definitely don't like, my whole existence and life doesn't revolve around Michael Jordan, but some of the work ethic and some of the drive to be the best, the drive to say, is there another level in me that can be found? And if so, I want to find it. Like, those are the things that I drew from him early on when I was younger, and sports was my entire life. I mentioned that earlier in the talk here, right? Um, then it would move into some people, the mentor that I mentioned to you, who told me about this avatar, and that was somebody I met when I did live in Bermuda, and I was, young and growing up then, and that was a big influence on my life. Then next would be a mentor of mine by the name of Ray Martinez, who unfortunately about 2.5 months ago lost to COVID. Um, he was somebody who taught me a lot of things about understanding the difference between confidence and cockiness, or confidence and arrogance. And he was also in this industry as well. And when I was younger, that was a very hard line to walk, because when so much notoriety and all of this seems to be coming so easily, and everybody wants to be around you, and in certain arenas, like, people want you to take pictures with them and sign autographs for them, and you think to yourself, like, I'm nobody. But then eventually it kind of goes to your head, like, I don't know, maybe I am somebody more important than I realize I am. And he used to always say to me, David, don't ever believe your own press clippings. Don't ever believe your own press clippings. Just stay focused, stay grounded, stay the good person you are, but still be confident about what you do. Be confident in the skills that you've learned, and be confident in the things that have always been in you, and you just had to learn that they were there. And that stuff is just so impactful to me, because the reality is, I love helping people. There's nothing more exciting to me than helping other people find their success. And um and so I think I really got that from him.
Yeah, yeah, it's a hard lesson too, the whole difference between cockiness and arrogance,
Yeah,
and actually having like the confidence.
yeah,
And I always put that in my own head. It's humility and understanding what humility is. And humility, a lot of people think that it's a denial of your own skills, and that's just not true.
mm,
And humility is accepting that we are fallen human beings, right? And we have our problems and the things that are, that make us human. Um, but we also have that spark of divinity, right? That we have the skills and the creativity and the stuff that we've poured our heart and souls into, that you are perfectly within your what you call it, like purview, I guess, to hold out there for the world and be like, hey, this is something I'm really good at and I can help you with, or I can improve your life because of these things, right? And like true humility is understanding both sides, right? Understanding that, hey, I'm human and I make mistakes and I have problems, but also I'm extremely capable, right? And here's the areas that I'm capable and where I can give my value to you.
sure. I don't think anybody should ever be afraid to be really, really good at anything. I think people should be afraid when they think that they can't still get better. That's
Yeah.
kind of one of the things I've always said to myself. If there ever comes a day where I don't think I can get any better at what I'm doing, then I want to stop doing it and just do something else.
Yeah. When you've become when you have, what do you call it? If you've ripened completely, the only way forward is to rot and fall off the tree.
That's a great analogy. I love that.
So cool. So one of the last questions I have here for you is about your guiding principles, right? And it's one of the things that makes heroes heroic is that they live by a code. For instance, Batman never kills his enemies; he only ever sends them to Arkham Asylum. So as we wrap up the interview, I want to talk about top one, maybe two principles that you regularly use in your life, that maybe you wish you knew when you first started out on your own hero's journey.
Number one, I think that we're never promised anything. We're never owed anything in life. If you want it, you got to work for it. If you want to be the best, you have to do the things it takes to be the best. You don't want to look for shortcuts. Shortcuts, the first word in that is short. Shortcuts are typically short-lived. And I think that early on I saw so much success that I was able to take a lot of shortcuts. But then there was a period of time where all of that kind of dipped down, and then I had to work my, I'll say, work my butt off. Sorry, I had to work my butt off to get back to where I was, and then to go any further than that point. So I think just knowing that you get out of life what you put into life, and that transcends across work, that transcends across relationships, that can transcends towards your personal feeling about yourself, like all that applies to everything, not just work. um and then the other one, I think I alluded to it earlier, is just never stop growing. Never stop growing. I love that analogy that you made about, once you've reached the level of ripening, the only thing you can do is rotting. And I don't ever want to rot. Like I want to continue to keep ripen. I keep searching and keep looking for what is that next thing. And also, I think it's important for people to understand that that is not a sign of discontent. That is not a sign of not being appreciative of who you are. Because I think sometimes, and I've even people have had people say that to me, like, dude, aren't you just content with where you are? Or are you not happy about what has happened to in your life at this point? And I'm like, you don't get it then. I'm a million percent happy about those things, but I want to drive myself to find out, is there something else? Is there something else out there? And if there is that something that I could pass on to the next person?
Yeah, I call that whole mentality contented ambition, right? Where you learn to be happy and joyful with where you are, but you know where you're going, right? You have a destination,
Yeah.
right? Because if you it's the whole the joy is in the journey kind of thing. If you ever reach the destination, then you're not going anywhere. You're not doing anything. So you can be happy about where you're at, but if you don't also have somewhere where you're going,
Right.
some sort of growth path or something that you're actually trying to go strive for, then you're not doing anything, right? You're stationary. And that's like it's not how you build a business or grow a business or live your life, right? You always have things that you're building towards. And for me, it's always something that really got a lot of clarity for me when we started traveling full time, was realizing that like, we have, it's like, hey, we want to get to New York, right? But knowing that it's like, hey, that's where we want to get, but like we have to enjoy where we're at now, but also like, you plan maybe the next couple of days, but you don't plan every single day from here all the way till where your ultimate goal is. So it's an interesting concept of learning how to have that contented ambition.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that an excessive level of contentment, though, is very dangerous too. Though, I think when and not to say that you were saying that by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that people can fall, because when people say, "Aren't you content? Aren't you content?" and I always say, "Listen, if I'm content, it means I'm not focused, because I just feel like if I'm content, I'm resting. I'm in a state of rest. I'm in a state of, everything's fine, everything's cool. I don't have to do anything anymore. It's all coming to me. It's all coming to me." And that's dangerous, because let's be honest, man, human beings for the most part are pretty lazy people, right? So it's pretty quick and it's pretty easy to just fall into laziness. And I'm sure that a lot of people during this COVID time frame have found that out. It's another interesting dynamic about how we always want the opposite of what we have until we have that, and then we want the other thing back again. I know that when I was working like 18 days straight or 18 nights straight before I had a night off to do anything, I'm like, oh goodness, I can't wait till I can have a day off. I can't wait till I don't have to think about anything, and blah, blah, blah. And then COVID hit, and then I wasn't doing any events, and then I was like, holy moly, this sucks. I don't know what to do now. Like, I have no idea what to do. And until like this shift happened where we were doing like events and doing things with people through Zoom calls and through hybrid type situations or virtual type situations. I mean, we were literally doing nothing. And like, it took about, I don't even think it took 48 hours for me to be like, I'm not going to be good with this at all. So I just really think that like people, temporary contentment is great, but don't fall on that contentment. Like, be content, enjoy it, and then get back on your horse and keep riding.
Yeah, keep going. It's because it's all about the journey where you're going, and
Yeah,
knowing that sort of you have a path you have to go. Because we are not meant to be stationary in anything in our life, in our mentality, in our business, and anything that we're doing. We're meant to be moving.
absolutely.
So that's basically a wrap on our interview, but I do finish every interview with a simple challenge. I
Okay.
call it the Hero's Challenge, and it is a selfish little thing I do that helps me get access to stories I might not find on my own. So the question is simple. Do you have someone in your life or in your network that you think has a cool entrepreneurial story? First names are fine. Why do you think they should come and share their story on our show? The first person that comes to mind.
First person that comes to mind, I would probably say Nick, my co-host. That's who I would say. Probably the co-host on my show that does it with me is the first person that comes to mind because he is somebody who in a very short period of time has taken the lessons that have been taught to him and applied them in amazing ways, just amazing ways. And I mean, and his journey really is just beginning. So, um, interesting guy for sure.
Absolutely. Cool. So we'll reach out later and see if we can get him on the show. So in comic books, there's always the crowd of people who are standing around and cheering for the acts of heroism of our heroes. So our analogous on that show as we close is I want to find out where people can find you if they want to hire you for an event in the future. Where can they light up the bat signal, so to speak, and say, "Hey, David, we got an event for you to come in and DJ for us." And I think more importantly than where is who are the right types of people to reach out and say, "Hey, yeah, we'd love to have your help."
So, the first answer to your question, all social medias, my name is David Hanscom, and I'm assuming that could be the spelling of that will be in the show notes or
Yeah,
something.
it'll be in the show notes.
People will mess that up. But all social medias, and by the way, I follow everybody back that follows me. I make it a point to do that. So, and I want to communicate with people. I don't want to just be ghost followers, like just for numbers. Like, let's actually create a relationship in this situation here and see if we can help each other in one way, shape, or form. And then, of course, my website is just davidhanscom.com. So I try to make it very, very simple, very, very, the old KISS method of things. So I try to do that. And then ideal client would really just be anybody who is looking to celebrate an event or put something together that isn't afraid to push the boundaries of what they think is possible and not just live within the confinement of four walls and some tables. Like, there's so many other really cool things that we could do, and with a little bit of open mindedness and maybe just a little bit of exploration, we can take something that would otherwise just be just like everybody else's event, and we could take it to something that's even way beyond that. So those are the kind of people I love working with.
Absolutely cool. Well, David, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been a fascinating conversation. And if you're listening today and you have an event coming up and you're looking to, again, take it to the next level and turn it into a memory, definitely take the time to reach out to David and his team. It sounds like you would really enjoy having him work with you. And again, David, thank you for coming on the show. Do you have any final words of wisdom for our audience before I hit this stop record button?
I would say just keep live every day like it might be your last day. Don't have any regrets in life whatsoever. go after whatever you want to go after. And if you fall short, you didn't fail. You just found one other way not to do it, and just keep pushing, and you'll find the right way. Just don't ever stop, going after what you want in life.
Absolutely. You can sleep when you're dead, right? Thank you very much, David.
Thank you very much as well.